Hello and welcome to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. My name is Mehmet. I share daily insights about the latest news and trends in technology while exploring their problem solving abilities. I also talk about startups and entrepreneurs and their innovative products and services. I also sometimes interview people in technology like myself to share also their insights about the latest news regarding technology. So let's get started. Today I have with me Rob Broadhead, who's joining me from Tennessee in the United States. Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Rob, can you just introduce yourself a little bit about you and your business and what you do in general?
Okay. I have been in technology for a little over 30 years and have done basically have done every role within development that, starting from a low level coder up through managing teams and departments and things of that nature. Some people would refer to me, I guess, as sort of a fractional CIO, CTO to this point,
Mhm.
because I've got a consulting company that's been around now. Consulting company's almost, it's about 22, 23 years old. Done a lot of software development, whether it is custom, whether it's maintenance or new over the years for customers, and also have helped them navigate making decisions whether they want to build or buy software. And this is typically smaller businesses, done a lot of startups, a lot of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, small to mid-sized businesses as far as, employee size. So, maybe 10, 15 employees up to maybe a few hundred. Have done a little bit of work with Fortune 100 companies, but tend work a little bit more with smaller companies because I can sort of come in and they're the ones that don't have an IT department, and I can
Right.
come in and help them out, help them either build one, go find people, hire the right people, or we can come in and be an outsourced department for them.
Okay, cool. So just out of curiosity, like for me, when I was a kid, I was always fascinated by computers and what they do. So, what drove you to become a consultant in this field?
I was the technology side, the programming side of it was, something I came into, I think, because I liked math. I like solving problems, and at an early age, I was exposed to a computer course, a programming course, and fairly quickly liked the idea, the concept of being able to, write code and get a computer to do stuff. And then that led to getting a degree in computer science, and then after I graduated, I started working with some consulting companies and realized that consulting was better suited to me because you end up, you move around, you get to see a lot of different companies, different organizations, different problems, and you're less likely to get in a situation where you're sort of, solving the same problem and over or anything like that. So it was for me, I'm much more comfortable coming in, helping a customer basically solve the problem, being able to just then move forward without needing me. So, automate a solution or something along those lines so that then I have always essentially worked myself out of a job. So that is much more suited to a consulting role than being an employee.
Cool. I have the same story I can say because I myself also worked for a long time in technology and business consultancy. Now, one of the main issues usually from my experience, and I want to take your opinion also, people think that it's easy. Yeah, you just go understand the problem the customer is facing and you just put the solution in front of him. But actually, you and me, we know it's not like that easy. What do you think are the biggest challenges for someone who work like us from, being customer facing at the same time, you need to come with the right solutions. But, what are these big challenges that usually we face in our career and day to day, I can say?
I think there's two sides to the same challenge, and it goes to what you originally point out is you come in, you figure out the problem, you solve the problem. Well, that first part of figuring out the problem is a big challenge in itself, is really getting good requirements and understanding the problem and understanding what are valid solutions requires the two sides of that I was talking about. Is it's one is for the customer to really think through what it is they're solving and understanding their process. And doing it in a way where they can think outside of the box a little bit, because a lot of times I've walked into a customer that they have a problem, they have a solution that they've already envisioned, and it may not be the best solution because they don't have they don't know some of the technology options and costs and risks and things like that to make a complete decision, and they may have made a decision they need this really high-end complex solution when really they don't. There may be tools or methods that are much simpler, or vice versa. It may be something where they think that there's only a partial, simple, lightweight solution that's, sort of getting them through it as opposed to really solving the problem, and we can come in and help them understand what a more complete solution would look like. And of course, the flip side of that is going in and understanding the customer situation, their business, their specifics. Because I found even if you go into the same line of business, the same industry, there's still going to be some differences, and those differences can be very important in providing the best solution for your customer.
Yeah, I always call it like it's because you touched on something very familiar to me. Like go and find a solution which is deployed, and I like to make the similarity here. Because in the world of startup, they talk about is it a painkiller or is it a vitamin? And I find out that they bought a vitamin that it just kind of sorted out the problem, but it was not the ultimate one for them. And actually, this is also important because you mentioned about getting the right technology for them. So us being in technology, we need to follow the trends and we need to understand what's going on. So from your perspective, what usually you do, or what are the tools or means that you rely on to stay up to date with the latest trend in technology?
I actually use a lot of, although I consume a lot of content, and so I listen to podcasts, I'll check out blogs and news articles, vendor sites, but really the starting point of that a lot of times is just a search engine search on a specific topic, and I've a lot of times will work with customers and say, that is a low tech way to get a better view of your problem and the environment around that. For example, if somebody wants to solve a problem that deals with payroll,
Mhm.
you can go search payroll solutions and see tons and tons of results out there. It's hundreds or thousands of results, and so there is that challenge of sorting through those results. But sometimes you can take those top, 5 or 10 results and just sort of read on a little bit, and then that'll allow you to refine your solution. I've had several customers that, I'll essentially go do a search, give them 2 or 3 vendor sites where they just talk about the products and what the features are, and then say, "Hey, take a look at this, see what makes sense to you." And then the next thing you know, they can come back and say, "Oh, wait a minute. We had this very generic, general solution that we initially asked for. But now that we've spent a little time looking at what's out there and what are common features and typical features, and even the uncommon features, like what are some specialty things that certain products provide that are maybe a little outside of the norm in that area." And they'll say, "Oh, this thing that this company does, we love this. So this is something that we want to, as best possible, see if that can be included in the solution." And whether they end up buying or whether they need something built, it still helps advance that discussion and get from a point of a general solution to start nailing down more details and to get into that next level, to get more details, more understanding, and help the customer understand better what's out there. And in my case, it's, if I'm doing that research, it's to help me understand better what's out there and how I can make some suggestions to a customer and say, "Hey, you talk about this thing that's a pain point or a challenge that you have. Did you know that there is a solution out there that will address that for you? Or there are features out there that you want to make sure that you include when you're talking about a solution so that you can relieve that pain point or solve that problem for yourself."
Cool. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Now, related little bit to that, and because we're living in a very fast-paced like world, and every day a new technology comes in, But from your perspective, I'm always curious, and I think I ask this question to single guest I have with me. But from your perspective, what are you really seeing? Because there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of noise in the market about new technologies. But what do you think really now is are the technologies that are leading the way, which customers should be following and I mean they are understanding more about them?
I think the big one right now is, sort of we're getting into and understanding a little bit more is the whole AI, GPT and, uh, chat bots and bots in general, and having systems that respond in a human, we'll say a human-like way, to offset a lot of times it's to offset, queries and support calls and things of that nature. But this is something that's I think we're starting to see it sort of, has over gotten to a level where it is simple enough to use, it is powerful enough in what it provides, that this is, I think, going to be sort of a new wave of ways to interact with your customers. Just like back many years ago when they first started putting together, integrated voice response, where you would go into a phone and you could, hit a couple of numbers and it would work you through, a navigating you'd work your way through a menu basically and end up either, transferred to the right person, or it would get you the information you needed without even having to bother a person. Well, now, move forward and we have the web and we have so many ways to contact a business, and AI is big, especially from the web point of view, is I think starting to become a nice front end, a nice initial contact. But companies are also trying to figure out how to leverage that and also how to do that in a way that I think continues to allow customers to feel like they are being treated as a customer and, as a human, as a person, as opposed to just another customer, just another order, and trying to find that balance and where can you offset or where can you uh, outsource certain tasks that you do, and it makes sense to you and it makes sense to your end user. And then where are the things where you still really need to keep those in house or keep those personable so that it doesn't, essentially annoy or sometimes even anger your customers.
Yeah, 100%. 100% I agree on that as well. Now, shifting a little bit the topic now, like you started your career as a programmer and then, you went to the consultancy, but I believe now you're doing more of mentorship and kind of also like business involvement. So, and I got asked this question because I did kind of the same, I would say, transformation. And people usually ask how you do it. So I explain from my perspective, but I always tell them, look, like everyone is different and you need to talk to a lot of people who can explain to you. So if you can just like share your experience from, shifting from a pure technical role or like career to something that touch business. What's your advice like on a high level to people who are looking to do this shift?
I, th- for me, it was sort of a shift that was pushed upon me. I would find myself in situations where I needed I needed extra resources. I needed other people that I could lean on. And the mentors that when I started looking to that, when I started looking to hiring people and I looked at departments that I was at and saw that there was in some cases there was a lack in certain areas of knowledge and ability for people to progress their career, then I realized that, hey, I can help them and I'm helping myself as well. Is find people, teach them how to sort of follow the same path I did, is which is you start with your really get a good foundation in technology in particular, because there's so many things out there, so many paths you can go, and there's so many effectively, we'll call them shortcuts that you can take. For example, you can jump into a boot camp and in some cases within a couple of weeks sort of know how to write code in that language. And I say sort of because you can write code and you may have a couple of things that you know how to solve, but actually having the foundation within programming and developing software and understanding that it's far more than code, understanding the architecture and the integration of all of those pieces that you're building takes a little bit more and takes a different focus. And so that was something I realized that I had. I was fortunate enough. I was in a situation that how I was trained and taught was very foundational based. And so that allowed me to then grow as new technologies came out. I had that solid foundation, so it wasn't as big a step to add a new technology. And the next thing I knew, I had dozens of languages that I had worked in and applications I'd built in those languages. And it may seem, amazing to do that, but it's really not when you have that foundation. And there's only languages have syntax that's difference, but there is the approach that they take to solving problems in general. It's not that there are hundreds of them. There's a lot of languages that have the same sort of general approach. And once you figure that out, it's easy to adjust to the syntax. And so I think anybody that either feels like they're being pulled in that direction or wants to go in that direction, it comes back to, like, make sure that you have a really solid foundation, that you understand core software development, theory and how to apply it. So it's things like, the basic stuff, like understanding how the logic around programs and how logic works and how looping works and how collections works. But then really to take those next steps, you have to understand things like what are patterns and anti-patterns and what are some of the different methodologies, whether it's the old school waterfall or understanding agile and especially now since that's such a big thing, scrums and sprints and how did those things
Mhm.
help you become a better software developer. And that's really the whole podcast side that I do is about, building better developers. It's taking us wherever we're at and adding the skill sets to take us to that next level.
Actually, I was about to ask you about your podcast because I know people sometimes associate podcasting. I'm not talking about the US, but I mean from the place where I am because there are very, very few deep tech or technology podcasts focusing on business. So, what do you think the value? And I'm asking this not only for the audience, even for myself. What do you think what add value we can put here when us people coming from technology background we put our thoughts to a podcast?
I think, well, it really depends on what your audience is. I think is because there's the technology for technology people that I think is very useful because it allows you to, at least for me, and I think this for a lot of people, it allows you to consume that content more often, particularly, like drive time and travel time and stuff like that when you would maybe otherwise not be it's not conducive to sitting there and keeping up with what's the latest technology trends and what are the things out there and what are the problems that are being solved. I think from a technology to technology group, it's very useful to help keep you up to date and current. And then for me, it's the technology to business kind of side. It's talking more about how do we bridge that gap between the business side of a problem and the technology side of it. And I think that's something that the more that we can hear other people's experience and what they've done and how they've overcome that, the more tools we have to do that when we run into it. Because it sort of goes back to your prior question. If you're getting to a point where you are growing beyond, being a coder and you're developing and you're going into more of a mentor and a lead kind of position, a management position, you need to be able to do that, be that bridge or that liaison between the business side and the technology side so that we can understand on the two sides of it how to really solve that problem, how to understand what are the needs for the business and what are the options that technology provide for you.
Yeah, yeah, that's something I agree with you on. Now, before we wrap up, actually, a question just popped up in my mind because your community website is called Devopreneur, right? So,
Correct.
and recently I started to see this hype and everyone talking about becoming solopreneur. Um, and when it comes to starting something, of course, they need to have the tools that allows them to build that. So how you are seeing this uh, going? Do you think it's just like a wave that it will fade afterwards, or is it something that is here to stay? I mean, all these things we are seeing with one single founder or one single guy who's starting the whole thing and building something around it. Well, what do you think about that?
I think that it is going to boy, that's a it there's a lot of things that feed into that. I think from the developer side, I think it makes sense that it will continue, whether it's a solopreneur or a very, a small group. And if you look at a lot of these successful companies are out there, that's how they started. If you look at, Microsoft or Apple or you just, Google or Facebook, you can go through all of these examples. It really started with one or two people, and if you're a developer, you actually have the tools that you need. You a lot of time, I mean, you especially now because most of the like compilers or interpreters or things like that, you can go out there and you can have a full integrated development environment. You can have version control. You can have database. You can have all of these things that are free. They're out there. You can use, shareware. You can, or I guess now, you can open source stuff. You can use trials and demos and developer versions of things that will allow you to really get a good step forward in building enterprise class software if that's it's sort of limited then just by your skill set. So it makes a lot, and that's a great place to build a product that is a perfect side hustle, a perfect entrepreneurial start of saying, "Hey, I can solve this problem. I can do it real well." And then it's really a matter of I've got to find usually I need to find somebody that can sell this to other people for me because you probably don't have as a developer, we are not usually as, sales and marketing skilled, but some are. And that's really where the developer side came up is realizing so many developers have some of the skills that an entrepreneur has, and they have some of that same drive in a lot of cases. If you're spending that much time on your career, staying current, advancing, because you basically have to as a developers in the software world, it's things are moving so fast, you have to stay, you have to be driven enough to stay current. And if you're doing all that, you might as well do it with yourself as a boss because most of us as developers are solving these problems and get this feeling like, "Hey, we understand this. We can solve this and solve it better," which is exactly what an entrepreneur does, is they say, "Hey, I see a problem. I see a solution. I think this solution the world needs," and they drive forward. And so that's that merging of the drive and having a skill set and tools available to create a solution that honestly, if you go listen to like side hustle podcasts
Mhm.
and passive income and things like that, a lot of those entrepreneurs will talk about how the sort of the golden standard for them would be to be able to create software because a lot of times they have these problems and solutions that they can see, but they don't have the development skills to be able to actually create the application or the product. If you're a developer, you have those skills, so you don't have to go find that person or that team. You can do it yourself and you can then just pour sweat equity into it. You pour your time and your effort into it, and then let's say the next thing you know, but after that, after you've invested that for a period of time, whether and sometimes it's, maybe months or a year or two, you have a product then that you can go sell and launch yourself into your own career if you want.
Actually, I started to see this, hype, and I would say it's a trend. And what you said resonated with me because when you talked about, they might not have the knowledge about how to do sales and marketing, but I think the current generation of entrepreneurs are much luckier, at least than my generation, I would say, because the amount of resources available for them, and the live use cases and there's even this in public trend as well, like where you can see them building whole applications sometimes just in a couple of days and sometimes hours, and then they know how they get the know how to do. So my expectation here is really, and I listen myself to the Hustle podcast and the other one. And yeah, because see, like we didn't have that much resources back in the day. So now I think they are much luckier than us in learning these skills. The final thing I want to ask you before we finish, Rob, is um, regarding the community that you have built. So what you are exactly trying to achieve with that community, and what's is it is intended for exactly? If you can just give me a brief about that.
Yeah, the developreneur community is really about it's almost, we refer to it sometimes as a mentor or a mastermind group because it is, in a sense, a combination of that, but it's us understanding that we can mentor each other. We're in business, we're in different situations, and we can then, come together and talk about what problems we're solving, the technology are out there, the tools that are out there that refer to them as nuggets. It's like, hey, I stumbled across this site, and this is a cool site. This is a cool service. This is a cool product. And so it's really building a community that says, "Hey, we're gonna put into this community, but we're also gonna get out a lot from this community." It's like if you think about it, it's sort of like the virtual idea of a bunch of you and a bunch of coworkers and people you like to hang out with, going out for, a meal or drinks or whatever after works and talking shop, as they say, talking about work and what's going on there. So it helps you, each of us stay current and helps us even, get some feedback about what we're struggling through.
That's great. Well, that's we'll bring the conversation to an end with you, Rob. Thank you very much for being my guest today. I appreciate your time. Anything you want to share, like any link? I'm gonna share the links anyway about your profile. But anything special you want to share before we end?
Nothing really. I mean, I would love for people to go check out school.developreneur.com if you have any interest. We've got lots of free courses and content out there. And if you're somebody that's about to step into a bigger project, then you can go out to the RB Consulting site. We do a free 30-minute consultation. We're happy to just try to get people pointed in the right direction. So if you're wondering about technology, then that's always obviously would love for people to take advantage of that. We're not there to sell you on anything. We're really just there to understand your problem and give you some first steps to help you avoid making mistakes.
That's cool. I will share the links with my audience in the episode description. Well, thank you very much, Rob. Thank you for coming today, and to my audience, thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this conversation helpful, insightful. As usual, if you have any feedback, if you have any questions, you can either reach out to me by email or you can reach out to me by contacting me over LinkedIn or Twitter. And until we meet next time, I hope you stay fine and safe. And thank you for tuning in again. We'll meet in the next episode. Thank you.